Good morning, Urban Abbey family. If I have not had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is Sangeetha Kumar. My pronouns are she, hers. And my spiritual brother, Jeff Spees, and I are going to talk with you about a show that is very dear to us. Did you ever just want to belong? Like really belong? I know I have. This is the heart of Somebody Somewhere. For those not familiar with it, you can find it on HBO or Amazon Prime. And it's short, actually, it's like 3 seasons. We both implore you to find it and watch it if you can. You will not regret it. The premise is about a woman named Sam who comes home to the family farm after the loss of her sister. She is re-engaging with family and friends and also trying to find a place of her own. The story has to do with people and places. I will be talking about people, while Jeff will be talking about spaces or places. Belonging is the center of this story. This takes place in Kansas, literally the middle of the country, which I think symbolizes that this story can relate to anyone. There are 4 characters I would like to talk with you about today: Sam, Joel, Fred, and Trish. There are many more characters, but these are the mainstays of the show. After returning home from the loss of her sister, Sam started out working at an ACT testing center where she meets Joel. Joel recognizes her, but she doesn't him. They realize that they went to high school together and sang in choir. They begin to spark an amazing friendship that is the inner thread of the story. Joel is a pastor and a gay man. He loves God and his congregation, but also feels there needs to be more depth and inclusivity. So he starts an after church, so to speak. He rents a place in a mall and invites Sam to come. She is reluctant, but goes. She encounters a church of song, dance, and so much diversity. She was a singer herself, and this starts the beginning of her re-engagement with music. Music is also an important aspect of the show and is seen throughout each episode. Now enter Fred. Fred is a leader in the community, down to earth, fun-loving, works at the university, and welcomes all. Fred is a trans male, but it is never really referenced. I will get to that point in a bit. He knows the family and offers help to her dad for farming issues and provides a place of safety and friendship for Sam. Now let me introduce Trish. Trish is Sam's sister. She is stylish, put together, has a boutique downtown, a nice house, church, and family. She comes across as pious and annoying and judgmental of her sister, until her own life starts to fall apart. I don't want to give away too much in the hopes that you will actually watch the show, but I will say that Trish starts to let her guard down, while Sam cares for her in unexpected ways. They develop an understanding that deepens their sisterhood. So why this show? What provides inspiration, encouragement, and insight? This show will leave you laughing, crying, touched, and longing for more. The themes are universal. And you don't get that right away. They hit you later throughout the show. Grief, chosen family, belonging, finding sacred in the ordinary. There's a scene where Sam and Joel have been at odds for a while. They get drunk and ride bikes through the town. And they end up at a donut place where they have the most ridiculous donuts and laugh their way through reconciliation. The show is about the ordinary moments in life. Everyone shows up as they are. There's no explanation, no argument, no unacceptable person. Fred never talks about being trans, really. He just is. Joel is a gay Christian, and he just is. Sam is struggling to find herself and grieving, and that's okay. And Trish is learning to be just who she is and not a mask of herself. This show is about finding sacred moments in the ordinary. This is where God shows up in the mundane and creates community. It is the reason, I think, why we come to the Abbey, to find God in the simple things, in the ritual, and to recommit ourselves to our values each week so that we can live them out throughout the week. Pastor Deborah opened up a series on wisdom literature. We learn from scriptures on how to live, treat each other, and engage with our Creator. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8 says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. I'm sure many of you have heard this, but I'm going to read it anyway. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. I feel that this show embodies this wisdom. And also, it challenges us to think about what is the wisdom that we are writing each day? What is our narrative that we are living out? Every day, you and I are somebody in some place making a difference in the lives of those around us. Our actions matter. Our interactions matter. Taking our spiritual beliefs and practicing them in the world today is what I think it means to have earth on it is in heaven. All the while being just who we are, no explanation, providing belonging, humor, laughter, music, and maybe just a great donut. May it be so. Amen.
Good morning. I am Jeff Spees, and I'm glad I get to be here today talking about the show Somebody Somewhere. I'm glad I get to share it with Sangeetha. When I found out that Sangeetha also loved this show, I felt very validated because Sangeetha is like one of the coolest and most creative people I know, and I feel like I'm in good company there. As Sangeetha mentioned, Somebody Somewhere was on for 3 seasons, and I like that. I like that it's short, maybe a little critical of a lot of American TV shows. We kind of they drag on. So I'm going to try my best to not drag on, just stick to the point. I got a script. I'm not watching the show, okay? So it's called Somebody Somewhere, but it really could be kind of any of us and anywhere. As Sangeetha mentioned, it's about Sam and Trish and Joel and Fred in Manhattan, Kansas. But the stories and themes and the places are universal. The places that sort of they present are the diner, around the dinner table, in the basement playing cards with friends, out on the fields, at the barn, on Main Street, in an abandoned mall, or kind of a dead mall, church. Each of these places sort of shows how there's an opportunity, I guess, to find the kind of sacredness in small kind of everyday moments, God meets us in those spaces. We don't have to just wait for perfection or these idealized sort of moments in time to experience God. They can show up in our lives in times of grief or small acts of love, and just being present with friends. The moments of the show where there is a sort of divine kind of interaction between friends and religion, they're treated very gently on the show. Often in TV and movies, when they present Christian characters, they're often, for good reason, like kind of presented as fundamentalist, judgy, out of touch. And when kind of religion and church is presented here, it's just presented kind of like Sangeetha said, without apology, just very integrated, inclusive, and very human. Kind of shows us that the church can be kind of any place we want it to be, as long as we're together. It's about belonging. A few weeks ago, Sangeetha asked the question: have you ever been in a place where you didn't feel like you belonged? Have you ever had a place that could you call it home? And so the places in Somebody Somewhere are about a sense of home. They're full of inclusion, love, and allow people to demonstrate their commitment to one another. So I want to talk about just a few of these places. One is this choir practice. Another is kind of the farm and this barn, and then church. So Joel, as Sangeetha mentioned, has this thing on Sunday nights at this church in a dying mall called choir practice, and it's not really officially sanctioned by the church. In fact, he kind of tells them it's choir practice, but it's really this space where a lot of kind of queer-friendly, kind of queer-adjacent people come together in a safe space to celebrate and sing. And that's where Sam's story kind of comes in. She's invited by Joel, and in that kind of feels this love and sings and starts to really transform herself. Eventually, Joel does feel kind of bad about not telling the church what's really going on, and so he does and kind of has this kind of crisis of faith and leaves. And we'll kind of come back to the choir practice here in a bit. Another space is that kind of on the farm and in the barn. So Sam and her sister Trish are trying to help their parents understand what to do with this farm long term, because their mom is kind of struggling with alcoholism and kind of in and out of kind of a rehab center, and Ed's this kind of gruff guy that really doesn't connect with a lot of people, but really Sam and Ed connect, and so Ed doesn't really know what to do with that farm. And then enters Fred. Fred is in agricultural science at Kansas State. It's kind of this transgender man who Ed and Fred, they're very opposite, but they just really connect very well. And not many people, like I mentioned, understand Ed like Fred does. So Fred helps them kind of think about this farm, ways to cultivate it. Students come out and learn about using the land and being a good steward of that resource. Eventually, it's a space that Joel will officiate the wedding between Fred and Susan, and it's a very beautiful part of the show. And then the farm and the associated barn, they kind of really don't know what to do with this as they're trying to figure out what to do with the farm. And Fred's got this idea that maybe the barn could be the place for choir practice. This could be the place that everybody comes together. And so Fred has this party bus, brings his friends together. They get on the party bus, go out to the barn, and they start to show and talk to Sam about maybe this could be this new space. And she's very touched and moved and ends up kind of singing this song on a keyboard out there and about this community that she has, and the friendship and the space is kind of and her grieving and processing that grief. And after that's over, Joel just sort of pauses and says, let's just sit in this for a moment and be together, because Fred wants to get back on that party bus and go back. So they sit there for a moment. Eventually, they make their way back in the bus, and they start singing. And the song that they sing, it is definitely not appropriate for me to recite the lyrics of what they're singing. Not at all. Here. You should put headphones on if you're with... anyway. But as they're singing at the top of their lungs in this party bus, Joel is just like, this is the church. Like, we're together. And that's pretty cool. It, kind of now, like, thinking about the home. The show opens up with Sam getting off of she's sleeping on a couch. She's got this kind of stretched out shirt, and you can tell that she's struggling because in Holly's old home, and she doesn't want to go. She can't bring herself to go into Holly's room. But throughout the show, in this community that Sam brings together, eventually she's able to go in that room and fully kind of process her grieving. And that going through grief is with others, it's a real vehicle that we can have to share sacred moments with each other. And the show has numerous times where another setting is the vehicle. Often it's you see Sam in her sister Holly's truck, alone, kind of processing and mourning that grief. Sometimes they're on road trips or party buses together. Other times, Sam and Joel are in the car to drive and kind of investigate Trish's husband, because Sam is pretty sure that something's going on with he's cheating. And so the vehicle is this sort of portal for friendship and mourning. And Jesus, talks about in Matthew like that. Blessed are those who mourn, for they can be comforted. And that being comforted during grief is something that is really seen in the show. Grief isn't always about death. It could be loss of relationships, roles, the way things used to be. And I guess I'm kind of curious about how we can make spaces at the Abbey or in our lives with other people to process kind of long, complicated, non-linear healing, but just to be there for each other and be family for one another. And that's something this show is really a central theme, is this chosen family. Joel and the church setting for some of that to occur. Joel and Sam, eventually they go to Sam wants to kind of reconnect to her singing. She wants to meet up with a vocal coach. And she goes to a kids' recital that the teacher is going to have all of her students perform. And they're at this church, and they're just kind of watching the performance. And an adult named Brad is up there singing. And Joel is really struck by Brad, and you can tell maybe interested in a relationship with Brad. And eventually that comes to be. But they eat, Joel and Sam, there's kind of a little reception afterwards, and they eat this thing called St. Louis sushi that turns out to be very, spoiled. And there's a scene where the two of them are talking on the phone to each other while they're both in the bathroom. We talked about cannibalism the first week, farts last week, and now this, anyway. The point is that there's this friendship between these two. And when Joel is kind of suffering through this crisis of faith and doesn't really know where he wants to be, Sam knows that's so important to Joel. And she drives up to Joel's house and brings him out and says, we got to get back on the church hunt. And she says to Joel, I know that if something was very important to me that I was pretending not to miss, I would think WWJD. What would Joel do? Well, Joel would come to my house, put me in a bra, walk me out the door, and get me back into life. And that's sort of what happens in that moment. And that relationship that Sam and Joel have, this connection, it doesn't just happen by accident. It's being in proximity, being in this kind of places together, showing up for one another every day, whether it's at the diner, sharing meals, singing together. The whole point is that this being together, and church is when we're confused or lost, we know we have one another to reconnect with. I'm not really suggesting that the church is always four walls and a baptismal or even like a coffee shop, bookstore church. Like, it can be any space where we find connection with one another and create space for healing and celebration. Sometimes the most faithful thing we can do is show up for each other and sing and listen. At a time when maybe a lot of people want to label us as people here together and this commitment we have to justice and inclusion, some might misunderstand that or call us heretical or witches or these things. We can look to the people like Joel, Trish, Fred, and Sam and just be who you are without apology and trust that commitment. To be a strength to the weak and laughter to those that are grieving. So I hope that we can be church for somebody somewhere, not through perfection, but through consistent presence with one another. May it be so.